Good.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for today. It's Election Day, November 7th. So we will have the meeting start with this, and I'll hand it over to Tom.
All right. Good morning, Chairman and Commission. This is the date for the discussion of the county admin building discussion. There was 3 options that we gave due diligence to. Tanya and support staff back here will present to you. And then we can clean it up at the end. There's some time exigency on one of these options that the commission will have to make a decision on this month. We'll talk more about that at the end. So, Tanya, go ahead.
All right, good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. We are here today with a team, and so we have Justin Graham, who is the Senior Vice President with Schaefer Architecture. Andrew Diltz, our Director of Facilities, is here, and then myself, who will be presenting today on the County Admin Building. Before we get into the discussion on really the details of the options that the manager mentioned, I always like to talk about the history of what got us to the admin building. And that was back in 2017, as we were talking about space needs and space needs study. We had 3 departments that came to us with a great desire for space. And that was District Court, DA, and the Sheriff, and their need for space. And that total at that time was just under 50,000 square feet of space that was needed. And so the commission in 2019 provided space for the sheriff, and we repurposed some space in the adult detention facility, as well as built a small 2-story addition onto the adult detention facility. And that was at a project budget of just over $6 million. And then we also, to help the district attorney's office, we repurposed and remodeled some space on the 2nd and 3rd floor of the county courthouse. We also did some schematic design of the 2nd and 3rd floor if there was ever an opportunity to expand that 2nd and 3rd floor of the county courthouse. Then in 2022, after COVID hit, we understood that there was just a severe degree of court backlog. And so there was an opportunity there and a great need for district court to build additional courtrooms as well as bring on additional judges. And so the commission at that time made a decision to build 4 additional courtrooms. And so that was a courtroom on the 7th floor, 2 additional courtrooms on the 8th floor, 1 on the 9th floor, as well as provide appellate space on the 11th floor for 3 appellate judges, and then we were able to finish out the 2nd and 3rd floor for the DA. Also on the 1st floor, we were able to provide a traffic courtroom for the 1st floor, and that was done through COVID response funding of $1.17 million. And we are still working on this project, and I think that will be done April of May of next year. Is that correct, Andrew? Okay. And so in order to be able to build those courtrooms, county admin had to move out of the courthouse. And so that's what brings us to where we are today. And that is 8 departments that are in the Ruffin building. And then we brought on 1 more department, human resources, into the Ruffin building. And so as of right now, we are all in the Ruffin building. Some of us were brought on October 2022, and then HR was brought in June of 2023. So those are 9 offices that are in the Ruffin building. And so now we get into the county admin review. So just as a reminder, as we talk about the county admin building, these are the departments that we're talking about that would be in the county administration building. County Clerk, Board of County Commissioners, and that includes the space where you hold your meetings, County Counselor, County Manager, Facilities, Finance, Human Resources, Records Management, Register of Deeds, and County Treasurer. We also would have a lobby, courthouse police screening, and a small cafe. And so in total, administration building tenant area would be just a little bit over 61,000 square feet. And then you add circulation space in there, it's about 37%, which includes your core spaces of mechanical rooms, stairs, elevators, your corridors, and your restrooms. You're looking at 84,000 square feet. Okay, so now we're going to get into reviewing options. So if you recall, back in February of 2023, at the end of that meeting, you instructed me to look into 4 options. And so, those 4 options were leasing long-term in the Ruffin Building. And so currently we're in 51,000 square feet. It was to look into an existing building, and that is 250 North Water, also referred to as the Murphin Building. That's a little over 79,000 square feet, and I just might remind you that we do have a purchase agreement right now for $7,750,000, and we are currently in a due diligence period that will end November 30th, and then new construction. So we are looking at 2 options for new construction. That is 84,400 square feet. That goes back to all the departments that I just mentioned. We're also looking at an option that is less square footage. That's 62,200 square feet. That less square footage option takes the row offices out of that proposal or that programming. So that is the treasurer, that is the register of deeds, and that is the clerk's office. And that is, the reason for taking them out is due to an efficiency report that was done, and that puts them in the Reagan Building so that they are close to their appraiser's office. And then there was a 4th option, that was the Garvey Center proposal. I reached out to them and they said that they are no longer interested and asked that we withdraw their submittal. Okay, so lease long-term, I reached out to John Seifert, who is Mr. Ruffin's leasing manager. So I do have some information on that. Let me just go over what we're currently in right now for our lease option. We're in $16 a square foot, 51,000 square feet. That's until June of 2025. Our annual cost is a little over $816,000. We did spend what we estimating are $1.2 million for one-time costs. That was to get us in. That includes networking, signage, our construction remodel, movers, access control, some cubicles, and architectural and engineering services. And we have ARPA funding until end of 2024. So what they provided to us was an additional 7 years for a long-term lease that would give us a total of 10 years at the same price, $16 a square foot, and that is a full-service lease. So we are paying utilities and janitorial for that $16 a square foot. Within that $16 a square foot. Again, 51,000 square feet. So again, annual cost of $816,000. What's included in that is we have 146 employee spaces in the parking garage, and we have 10 spaces that are reserved spaces for anyone that is visiting the parking garage.
Can you clarify? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Full service lease, so $16 a square foot includes utilities. Is
Correct.
That, okay.
And janitorial.
Got it.
Yep. And so over 7 years, we would pay a little over $5.7 million for that lease. Now, we are paying parking for 19 reserved spots. That's an annual cost of a little over $9,000. So for 7 years, that would be $63,000. So in total, for 7 years, we're looking at $5,776,624 for 7 years. If I were to look at that lease for 50 years, what I did was an escalation on the base rate every 10 years of $2 a square foot. So at 20 years, I took it to $18 a square foot. 30 years, I took it to $20 a square foot. That's just an estimation on my part of what I think that escalation would look like. So for 50 years on that lease, we're looking at a little over $52 million.
So why are we talking about 50 years?
That was a request that I was asked to provide, is to give a long-term lease for 50 years.
Mr. Reffin say that he would do a 50-year lease?
He did not.
Thank you.
Add here that if we're going to move into a new admin space, I think commission had discussion throughout these last couple of years that this is a generational build. This is a, we looked at 50 years on all of these options will be a 50-year look of what it was going to cost county taxpayers to pay for this over that time cycle. So it makes it consistent with the other two options. So I'll just add that to the conversation.
How long have we had the courthouse? How long have we been there?
That's a great question. Andrew?
It was built in the 50s.
In
So
50s.
well over. Okay, I was just curious if that was kind
70?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so I'll move on to the existing building options. So Murphin Building, 250 North Water, just a little over 79,000 square feet. Okay, so this is a 6-story building constructed in 1983. Current occupancy is just a business occupancy. Floors 1 through 4 is occupied. Floors 5 and 6 are vacant. And then with our current purchase agreement, the building that is on 221 North Market, that would be demoed. Okay, so let me just go over this, and I'm going to be referring to the right side there. So the admin building, that's, again, a little over 79,000 square feet. You can see that blue building, that currently is not there, but that is what we would be proposing for the commission building room, meeting room. So that's a little over 5,000 square feet that we would have to add on there. And then with our parking, there would be 194 parking spaces. So employee parking would be 157. We would have the same reserve parking there of 19, so that would leave approximately 18 parking spots for guests. I also want to point out that this building is surrounded by all one-way streets. So at the top there is 2nd Street to the north. On the west side there is Water Street. On the bottom there, that would be south, is 1st Street. And then on the east to the right is Main Street. Also, records management would not fit in this admin building. There is not enough square footage there. There would be no secured parking, so the reserve parking for 19, that would not be secured. And then the only other thing I'd want to point out is that, and I might go back to this piece here. You can see that there's drop-off there right at the front of the building, and I think there was just some concern with just the exposure there of just how exposed it is to the building and the security piece there. Okay, so again, we worked with Justin, and he's going to get into some more details later, but there's 2 things that we did with our on-call architect as they looked at this building. One was a building evaluation, and the other was the block diagram. So for the building evaluation, we did an architectural condition evaluation, we did a structural condition evaluation, HVAC and plumbing condition, electrical condition. We reached out to our elevator and roofing vendor to do an assessment and report. And then we had Susan Erlenwine come out and do a phase 1 environmental site assessment. And we also had MABCD come out and do a cursory evaluation. What we know is that building structure and working systems appear to be in good condition. However, there are some conditions and concern that we would want to address before we, prior to occupancy.
Just one question.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Is this pretty, is this what you always look at when we look at new, at buildings? Like, this isn't different in any way, is it?
That's correct. Anytime that we feel that we have a building that we want to look at, that we may want to occupy, we will always do this type of building assessment. You bet. And Justin will get into those, into his, as he speaks about his initial construction costs. So I think Justin wants to talk about, first, he wants to talk about the block diagrams that he did for the building. So I'm going to hand it over to Justin.
Morning, Commissioners and
Morning, Justin.
staff.
Welcome.
Good to be with you. Excited to share these options with you today. And you have to pardon me, I think I did a little too much hollering at the Shocker game last night. I'm a little raspy today. So, as Tanya said, we're going to take a look at block diagramming for the Murphy building. The plan you see in front of you is the first floor. North would be up. The main entrance is here to the south, and then there's another entrance on the west side of this large two-story lobby. The wall layouts that you see in this plan, those are just existing walls. We're not looking at how to lay out each of these department spaces within the parameters of each department. We're really just looking at total department square footages and how they could fit into the building. Excuse me. So the pale yellow that you see there would be lobby and circulation space. Entering the front doors, the elevators are in front, directly in front, beyond the lobby. And then restrooms are located behind that. The enclosed stairs, there's 2 enclosed stairs serving this building, all 6 stories, are on either side of that elevator core. And then there's another required emergency exit to the east side of the building. As we looked at first floor, we felt like the treasurer would be a good candidate for that floor with the foot traffic that they have. Would likely envision the entrance for them to be somewhere in this area or over here, one of those 2 locations. Also, on this floor, there's a small suite in the southeast corner, and we're suggesting a cafe or snack area for that part of the building. One thing I want to mention is the access to the restrooms is on the back side, and currently there's no public access to restrooms on the first floor. And if we wanted to create that, we'd have to carve out some corridor space around on either side to access those, and didn't feel like we really wanted to give up that square footage for these departments to fit. So just a point to be made there about public access to restrooms. So then we'll move up to the second floor. This is a little under 9,000 square feet. As you exit the elevators, in front of you, you'd have an open railing, and this is open below, so again, to that 2-story volume that's in the lobby space. Here you do see that yellow is wider. There are corridors that wrap around to access the restrooms on both sides. And we're proposing the Register of Deeds to locate on this floor. There's about 700 square feet left. And another point to mention is the existing restrooms, they're not fully handicap accessible. So to address that, we would propose putting probably a unisex handicap restroom on each floor. We didn't show that in the layout, but that would be that would be a requirement for this project. Moving up to the third floor then, as you exit, this is about 11,000 square feet. So the building increases as it goes up in height. And exiting the elevators, if you were to enter Murphy Oil's office suite today through this pair of doors, there's a staircase that goes up to the second floor. And so that's, to the fourth floor. So we didn't, it wasn't pragmatic to put any department in this building that would have an open stair connecting across multiple floors. So what we're proposing is that you would really just separate that stair from the office suites and just return it to part of the common circulation. So on this floor in the southeast corner, we're suggesting facilities to locate there. There is some square footage, enough square footage in this space that we could bring over. There's 3 facility staff in the Ronald Reagan building currently. They're separated from Andrew and the rest of his team, and so we could bring those over and free up a little bit of square footage in the Ronald Reagan building. Also on this floor would be the clerk's office along the west side up to the north end. This floor also has a large server room. We're showing it remaining as is size-wise, but we think that we could probably reduce that. If you remember the Ronald Reagan building, there was a really large server room in that building that it was just larger than needed, and so we reduced the size of it. And so we would likely do the same here, although we just kept it for the time being. On the east side of the plan, there is a common break room and a smaller break room here. So just suggesting that might be a common break room space for the building. There is some additional square footage left over up here of roughly 700 square feet. That could all be one large break room, or it could be a combination of common meeting space or other use left available for expansion or what have you. Moving up to the fourth floor, this is about 13,500 square feet. And again, as you exit the elevators here, you have that stair that descends down to the third floor. So just as we treated it on the first floor, we would isolate it from any department and just make it part of the common circulation. Suggesting the commissioner's office suite located on the south half of the plan. And then on the north half would be the manager's. And then similarly, we have some common space left over on the east side that's a conference room with a little serving bar to the north that could remain as common or shared conference space. Up to the fifth floor, increasing square footage again, we're a little under 14,000 square feet. Exiting the elevator, again, we have a scenario of a stair that connects the fifth and sixth floors. Again, not wanting to dedicate that to any one department, we would suggest that we just separate the office space from that around it and let that remain part of the common circulation. We're suggesting the HR department on the south half of this floor and the counselor's office on the north half and around the east side. Again, there's a large break room here that we just reserved for common use, for shared use. We'll get up to the sixth floor. This square footage for the HR on this floor does not include the large training room. And so we are suggesting that be on the sixth floor. And again, we're about the same square footage overall. Again, stepping out of the elevators, we have this stair that would access the fifth floor in front of you. And then we're suggesting the training room down here on the south end with some foyer space for people to move in and out through. And then the finance department wrapping around the perimeter of this floor. Last, we do have a partial basement in this building. If you see here where the stairs and the elevator are, this really is just under the southeast corner of the building. It's about 3,600 square feet. A fair amount of that is mechanical and electrical space. Presently on the south end, there is just shared storage for the building. That could also be considered for conference space or any other use that you'd like. But to Tanya's point earlier, this building didn't really accommodate records management very well. They deal with pallets, large or heavy loads. Preferably, they would be in the basement in a slab on grade. And they're programmed at 5,700 square feet, and there's only about 1,600 square feet of usable space in the basement. Looking at the cost for this option, we have the building purchase at $7.75 million. For general interior remodel, we excluded the stairwells and the penthouse from the square footage. So we'd be looking at about 76,000 square feet at $170 a square foot is just under $13 million. To construct the new BOCC meeting room center that Tanya mentioned that would locate south of the building, we're about 5,500 square feet at $550 a square foot is about $3 million. There is some site work, maintenance to parking lot, sealing, striping, There's some pavers in front of the building that are sunken in a little bit, need some work, et cetera. And so we put $3 a square foot to that at about $175,000. This building does have a history of leaky windows, and not unlike other buildings that we've entertained. But about 10 to 12 years ago, they did replace the windows on the 5th and 6th floors as part of a project. But there's still signs of leaks in the other floors of the building, and so we would recommend replacing those windows. Making an investment in this building for the long term and for the overall health of it. And so that's roughly, or a little under $1 million. We do have some other maintenance of the windows that are up there. We allowed $35,000 for. And then as well, the elevators are still working, but they're really at end of life. Trying to get replacement parts is difficult, and so we did have the county's on-call elevator vendor review this building for us and make some recommendations. And if you were doing it before you moved in would be the ideal time. So obviously you're going to have elevators out of service, and the cost for that would be about $800,000 to do a modernization. Lastly, on major investments for this building, the HVAC has limited digital controls in it today. A large part of it are still pneumatic controls. And so for this building to function the way Sedgwick County would want to maintain it with digital controls of temperature, we would suggest replacing the controls, and that's at a cost of a little under $1 million. At the same time, when you do that, you would want to replace or retrofit the terminal units. There's 77 roughly that are scattered throughout the building, which condition the air. And it would be worth just replacing rather than retrofitting those, in our opinion, at a cost of about $2,500 a piece and a little under $200,000. So for this option, we're looking at a little under $27 million.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next option, which is new construction, and that's at 3rd and Main for 84,400 square feet. So this is the site plan for this area. And I'll just preface it with saying that we have not had any discussions with the city of Wichita on this plan. I think if the commission likes this plan, the next step would be to talk and work with the city of Wichita on some of this parking that we have designed here. But let me just walk through this. So you can see there where we have, we're right there on the corner of 3rd and Main with the new admin building, 4 stories. And so we had previously talked about a parking garage, but the way that we have designed this, a parking garage is not necessary to get the parking that we would need for employees and for guests that would be coming to both Reagan and the new admin building. And so we've done that through some on-street parking, which is parallel parking on 3rd Street, and you'd still be able to get two-way traffic on 3rd Street. We would utilize the south row of the parking at City Hall, and then also some angled parking here on Water Street. And so in total, we would have 298 parking stalls. We would need 228 employee parking spaces between Reagan and the new admin building. We would have 23 secured parking spaces, and that would leave us with 47 parking for guests in that scenario. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and then Justin's going to talk about block diagrams for 3rd and Main.
Okay, so here we're looking at the first floor. North would be up, and proposing the main entrance would be at the northwest corner of the building. The parking would be off to the west, and then secured parking to the south of the building. Main entrance located here. One would circulate into a large lobby space. We envision an open stair connecting up to the second floor. So this would all be a two-story volume with a little cafe at the north end and the lobby here in the center. To the south of that, we propose the BOC meeting room be located. So you'd have a nice lobby space for traffic to flow in and out of, and that square footage would also include an executive conference room in that area. In the core of the building, we're showing 3 elevators located here on the north, and then opposite that would be restrooms to the south. This would be an enclosed stairway that would serve all floors of the building here, and then we'd have another one up here to the north, and that would have an exit directly to the exterior. The treasurer would suggest to be located on the east half of this plan. The main entrance could either be through here, through this main circulation area, or possibly up here. At the southeast corner of the building would be facilities. And then, assuming there would be some presence of security in this space, we've got some space carved out for what we call courthouse police. And then a little bit of studio space to serve the communications. And this is just about 18,500 square feet for the first floor. Second floor is 14,845, and stepping out of the elevators, to this side again, you'd envision an open railing with this stair that connects down, and this would all be open to below. In the southwest corner of the building, the clerk, and then on the east side, register of deeds. And we have about 600 square feet of available area there to the north.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So if I take the second floor and put it on top of the first floor, it looks about, on your diagram, it looks the same way as at 4,000 square feet less.
Yeah.
Where what was cut out on the second floor?
So that's right. That's the reason.
What is it?
The reason that this is less is because this is open to below. So that's
okay.
not
Okay.
occupiable space.
Okay.
Yep. Sure.
I should have looked at it.
If we jump up to the third floor, we're about 19,000 square feet. So this is overhanging that first floor entrance area.
Okay.
And on the west half of the plan, we're suggesting finance. And on the east half would be HR. This square footage would include the training room on this floor. And then again, that 600 square foot available area there to the north. Up to the fourth floor, the top floor, we have 3 departments. We have the commissioner's office suite along the east side, and then the manager in the northwest corner, and the counselor in the southwest corner. When we did our programming originally, one of the goals was to have all these 3 departments located on one floor if possible. So that's something we can achieve here with new construction that we weren't able to achieve with the Murphin building. And then dropping down to the lower level, this would just be along the east half of the floor plan or the building. And we have area for records management as programmed along the east side. And then we have a lot of mechanical, electrical space that would serve the building down there. So one thing we didn't mention, there would be potential for a loading dock on the south side of this building. And if I back up, there would be a freight elevator located in this position that would just serve first and floor in the basement for purposes for records management. And so here we have a look at what this building might look like. Again, positioned at the corner of 3rd and Main. The view here is to the north, would be the northwest corner of the building. So the entrance would be here. We talked about that 2-story space in the front of glass here. And we have a lot of glass on the building, not only for benefit of bringing natural light into the workspaces, but as well, there's it's a little bit symbolic when we think about government and transparency and having a transparent building. We'd also envision the use of stone or similar materials similar to stone at the first floor. Oops, pardon me. So here would be the commission meeting room would be in that southwest corner of the building. So we would have that wrapped with a solid wall without windows into that space. And again, for security of that meeting space, that would be robust construction to for any threats. And then and that stone also, there's monumental character in government buildings. You think about the historic courthouse, the federal courthouse, catty corner to this building. So we like the use of that material in this building if possible. Overall, I think an attractive addition to the corner of 3rd and Main. New construction cost for this option, we understand the land to be roughly $1.6 million. The program square footage, 84,400 square feet at $375 a square foot, puts us in at about $31.5 million. Other site improvements, parking, loading, sunken ramp to a loading dock, sidewalks, lighting and all that, $10 a square foot at about $500,000. And then, as Tanya mentioned, there'd be some restriping of 3rd Street to convert that for parking on the north and south sides, as well as the angled parking along Water Street. And so we have an allowance of $25,000 for that. So this option comes in at roughly $33.75 million. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he's going to talk about some life cycle cost and some of the other options. Yeah. Skip by it. Oh, pardon me. Okay. Yes, so as Tanya mentioned, we did consider an option to locate Register of Deeds clerk and treasurer in the Ronald Reagan building as opposed to this building. Benefit is obviously the most expensive construction is new construction as opposed to remodeling. So in this option, the land cost remains the same. And then essentially we would be reducing the building from a 4-story building to a 3-story. And looking at that cost at $375 a square foot is roughly $23.5 million. Site improvements would remain the same, as well as the restriping of the streets. So that option is about $25.5 million.
Have we given any consideration to what Reagan looks like if the row offices go over, and what that is, and what the cost would be to renovate that building? Is that numbers for that?
We sure have, Commissioner, and that will be a slide upcoming.
Oh, fantastic.
Good question.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Andrew Diltz with Facilities, here to cover the life cycle costs for the options we discussed. One thing to note on these are based on today's costs, and the common items between the buildings were excluded from these slides. I'll walk you through the cycles here. So the parking lot repairs and restriping, we anticipate doing this approximately 4 times within 50 years for a total cost of $348,000. We anticipate replacing the window gasketing on floors 1 through 6. We anticipate doing that 2.5 times for a total cost of $186,500. We anticipate replacing the roof 2 times for just under $1 million. We have an allowance of $150,000 for exterior masonry and caulking maintenance. We have approximately $325,000 to replace plumbing fixtures throughout the facility. We have a water heater replacement at approximately $40,000. We have terminal unit motor replacements at approximately $130,000. We have direct digital control replacement at $750,000. We have air handler valve replacements at just over $12,000. We have terminal unit heater replacements at approximately $170,000. We have constant volume chiller pump rebuilds at $16,000. And we have rooftop units and unit controls for the BOCC meeting room at just over $300,000. That brings our total major maintenance for 50 years at just over $3 million for the Murphin building. On our utilities, this building is all electric, and these slides will exclude sewer and water, which we expect to be consistent between all the options. This all-electric building, we estimate our electric bill at just over $4 million, and for the BOCC meeting room, just under $250,000 for a total of around $4.4 million. This brings our total cost to the building at $34,548,235. Looking at 3rd and Main, we also have parking lot repairs and restriping here. The difference between the previous slide and this slide is the units, or the square foot. We're looking at approximately $83,000 for parking lot repairs and restriping. We're around $109,000 for window gasketing. Just over $1.4 million for roof replacements. We have a $50,000 allowance for exterior maintenance. $32,000 for replacing the water heaters. $176,000 for terminal unit motor replacements. We have $720,000 for direct digital control replacement. Just under $400,000 for VAV and air handler valve replacements. $320,000 for replacing the boilers. $80,000 for doing primary and secondary hot and cold water pump rebuilds. Our total estimated maintenance is just over $3.3 million. Our utility costs are about 20% less than the Murphin building at $3.5 million, bringing our total for this option at just over $40 million. If we compare the 3rd and Main option with the less square footage, taking the row offices to the Ronald Reagan building, we are at $83,000 for parking lot repairs. Our window gasketing is $81,000. Roof replacement is just over $1.4 million. We have an allowance of $50,000 for exterior maintenance, $32,000 for water heater replacements, $143,000 for terminal unit motor replacement, $600,000 for direct digital control replacement, $336,000 for valve replacements, $320,000 for boiler replacement, and $80,000 for pump rebuilds. This brings our total for maintenance at just over $3.1 million, and our utilities at just over $2.5 million, for a total building projection over 50 years at $31,123,500. If we do proceed with moving the row offices over to the Ronald Reagan building, we will have a estimated remodel cost of just over $2 million to remodel the Reagan building for the row offices. We would have to relocate some offices out of the Reagan building over to, we'd be looking at relocating the ComCare admin out of the Reagan building over to ComCare Crisis and CDDO, or Ark Valley Lodge, or Munger. Our estimate for remodel there is just over $2 million as well. This brings our total cost to $4,050,000 for remodeling ComCare Crisis, Ark Valley Lodge, or Munger, or a combination of the three.
Okay, we're close to the last slides here. So on this particular slide, Commissioners, we've been talking about a lot of costs. And so I just want to be clear on what this reflects. On long-term lease option, that's 7 years. So that total cost was just a little over $5.7 million. For the long-term lease option, 50 years, that's $52.9 million. Now, when I get into these options, I want to be clear on what these are. 250 North Water option. This is the cost for the building and for construction. This also includes costs for A&E, FF&E, which is furniture, fixture, and equipment, project contingency, plan review, permits, signage. So this is what I will always give you when I talk about total project costs. So that cost is $33,084,000. Third and main option, this is for the 84,000 square feet. That total cost is a little over $41 million. And then the third and main, less square footage option, that is total cost of a little over $31 million. So if you remember, we talked about the construction costs, that those were lower costs, but the reason that you're seeing this as a little higher is because I'm adding the total project costs. Again, that's A&E, FF&E, the contingency, plan review, permits, and signage. Okay, and then just a reminder that when we went through this whole process of talking about admin building and bringing all the departments in and getting their input, what we heard was for the admin building, they want convenience to the public, collaboration between departments, function and efficiency, and security and safety. Those were the highlights of bringing all the comments together. Those were kind of the bulleted highlights of stakeholder input. So we get to the discussion and question. Happy to answer anything that you have, and as well, Justin and Andrew are here to answer any questions that you might have. And then I might defer to the manager too if he has anything he wants to add.
Well, thank you, Tanya. This is really a more current update, so we can throw out our previous folders and documents. But if I understand right, the immediate decision that we will need to make even as a public vote is the North Water decision due to timing on the contract.
That is correct. So
the extended lease and the new construction is not an immediate decision. Is that? Unless we want to make it one.
You are correct. The due diligence that we have on the Murphy building expires 11/30. And the way that purchase agreement is written is if they don't hear from us, that purchase agreement goes through.
Okay. So by default,
Correct.
if we don't make a decision to approve, or more importantly, if we don't approve it, if we're silent, we got it.
You are correct.
And I know there might be some questions and comments, but out of respect to the row offices, since you were kind of in and out, do you want to address us on anything, your opinions on what you believe? I didn't prep you on anything here. I just, since if that's all right. And then we can get into comments and questions.
Morning, Commissioners. Who you guys want to start? Oh.
I just want to say, so I know I brought up the appraisers and putting us together, but I think if we are some close in proximity to the appraiser's office, that satisfies the customer service relation piece of it. I think it is more important for our offices to be in closer proximity to the commissioners, to the legal team, to the finance team, because our staff interacts with these offices on a daily basis. And I think we interact with these offices more on a daily basis than we do with the appraiser's office. I think appraiser's office is more for customer service convenience. And I don't want to discount that we don't interact with the appraiser's office, but I think our office staff is more in proximity and more close contact with your guys' offices. And to me, that is the most important piece I think that we need to look at when we're looking at these options as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'll echo that a little bit as well. I think as far as from my office goes, yes, from time to time we do have people to come to our office for the appraisals, we send them over, but proximity is more key. If we're across the parking lot, would be sufficient on that. I'll address the Baker Tilly study a little bit. That study was done to look internally between the 4 offices, either individually or how we kind of work together. That study was not done to look at how our offices interact with everybody else in the administration. So that'd be like the BOCC, the manager, HR, legal, communications, and that aspect. So they didn't take any of that into account of that study specifically. And so if they did, I think there'd be a little bit different recommendation if they were thinking, knowing that we were looking at a building or a future where we are going to move to a different location. So yeah, I'll echo my office multiple times on a daily basis works directly with the BOCC's staff, the manager's office, and specifically legal all the time. We're back and forth running down that hall all the time, as you see. And so yeah, an option. I mean, between options, my choice would be whether that's at the Murphy building where we're together or we're at a new building together would be sufficient for us. I'm sure there's a number of other things I could sit here and think about, but having not thought about anything except for the last 30 minutes,
Right.
If you guys have any additional questions for me.
Morning. As far as the register of deeds, it's mostly important that we're close to the county clerk because a lot of our customers go back and forth between those 2 departments. So wherever you guys decide for us to go. I do have one concern that has happened here recently with this building, and it's not to bash this building because this building has been fantastic. The space has been great. Parking's good. Recently in our department, we had a little bit of a flood in one of our rooms that affected our office, and we had to get facilities to put plastic on our books because a lot of those records are permanent, and we needed to make sure they weren't destroyed. We closed down the office because it was a smell from a bathroom, and the office was getting flooded, so we had to close down. We've never done that in the years that I've been there before. So we did do that, and it's not to bash the building. It's just that wherever we go, we want to make sure that it's, if it is a used building, that we're not in a place that we're in that situation again. So I felt like I needed to share that.
Okay. Right. Any questions for them? And then we come back to. Okay. Thanks for your opinions. I think that. Mark, you're already you're where you're at, right?
I'm where I'm at, but I do have something to say.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Clark, County Appraiser. Proximity is the most important thing. However, when it comes to where we're located, we are getting out of space. We do have a CIP project that will break in to most of our break room, and it's going to take that. The state keeps asking me, where's the people? And I said, I'm asking, they're giving some, so that gas is not going to go away. So I'm just letting you know that is something that we need to keep in mind. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's open it up. So, anybody want to say something? Yeah, Commissioner Dennis.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I want to thank Tanya and her staff, Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, and Fry, everyone that's been involved in this. This has been a very long process. I came on the commission in 2017, and that's when we first started talking about it. And we've been talking about it ever since. So it's really time to move forward. I agree with the chairman that there is one decision that we have to make immediately, and that's whether or not to go with North Water. I think after reading Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, and Fry's the report, and I highlighted the issues all through the report that I think are significant issues. I believe it's time that we let North Water go and look at the future. Again, we've been looking at it for a long time. and let me go back. The chairman indicated there was one decision has to be made immediately, but that doesn't mean that we can kick this can down the road indefinitely. We need to make that second decision because we are bumping up against the ARPA deadline that's coming up. So I don't want us to say, well, we're going to take care of one of the deadlines and forget about the other one. We need to move forward and make two decisions, not just one. So I want to make that very plain. As far as I'm concerned, after reading the report that we have on North Water Building with ADA compliance, with mold, with structural issues and so forth, I am ready to move forward without that building and see what the future holds. So that's general comments right now. As far as some of the other departments, we'll listen. I appreciate our row offices and what they had to say. I appreciate what our appraiser had to say. And long term, remember, this is not the only building that we're looking at. We're going to build a new ComCare Crisis Center. We're already moving forward with that process. So ComCare, I think, will probably eventually come out of the Reagan building. I don't see any reason that it would stay in the Reagan building in the future. So there's places that ComCare can go. It can open up areas for, I know Wampo's talked to Tanya about some additional space. The appraiser needs some additional space. So whether it's for the row offices or for something else, I think we can use the Reagan space in the future. We're going to have empty, we already have the Ark Valley Lodge that's open. We've already got Munger Building that's open. We're going to have ComCare Crisis Center where it's at now that's open. So we're going to have some locations for other offices in the future. The immediate concern still is, first of all, what to do with North Water, and second of all, what to do permanently for an admin building. And later on, after I hear everybody else, I'll tell you what my opinion is on it, but I would like to hear the other commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lopez?
These are significant costs that we're talking about, and this is a lot of money. Can you just real quick touch on what our debt capacity is and kind of speak on that just a little bit?
I will be delighted.
Yeah.
So, Commissioners, Tanya has provided all of the same information, including the project costs. And so what I've looked at is whether our current debt capacity can withstand all of this additional debt, especially talking about what Commissioner Dennis referenced before with regard to the other projects that are brewing out there that we still have. So even taking into account those other projects and what we anticipate that will look like, our additional debt capacity, and I'm going to focus on 2024 because I'm presuming we won't take any action on this year. We actually have another $208 million worth of debt capacity under our current policy. So we have more than enough to afford any of these options that have been put forward to you. Obviously, if we do a long-term lease, that's just general fund cash. But if we do debt capacity, we have quite a bit, even still anticipating those other projects, not taking into account any future revenue replacement that we may have on the table next year through ARPA.
If I may, Chairman.
Yeah.
So all the buildings we're discussing, CIP, bond, everything, ComCare Crisis, elections, juvenile campus, admin building. What am I missing?
Well, elections is not actually anticipated to be bond funded. We plan to pay for that with cash for now.
Okay.
So that is not on the list, but Regional Forensic Science Center is another one that's in the queue right now. We're also preparing to do some bond issuances for other projects that were done in 2023. So, for example, that would include, I'm trying to think, the multiple bridge projects. We have the 911 remodel that we will plan to do some bond issuances for, several projects of the adult detention facility, like, for example, that dishwasher exhaust project that you all just recently approved. All of those things are baked into these underlying estimates, and it's still that capacity over and above that.
We're looking $100 million worth of building projects in the queue?
If you include the admin building,
Yeah.
Yes,
Potentially,
but that includes that 22 million, for example, for juvenile services is already baked into the underlying numbers. So this $208 million figure that I reference is actually even over and above that. So this already takes that into account. What this does not take into account is any cost overages, for example, on ComCare Crisis, or this admin building. Other than that, everything that's been approved as a part of a CIP up to this point is baked into this figure. And this is capacity that you have over and above that.
Okay. Can you clarify, the lease here expires 6/30/25, correct? When is the ARPA deadline? We can use ARPA funding up to what point here before it goes into general fund?
Go ahead, Lindsay.
December 31st, 2024.
So we'd have 6 months of general fund. Okay.
Right, without a doubt.
Without a doubt, we're already-
But we do anticipate having at least enough revenue replacement to
Okay.
cover that cost.
Next question on the lease here, Justin might be able to help. So if we do choose a construction or a remodel, is it longer than 18 months, you think? If we got started today, I mean, it's 18 months before the lease expires here. My question's a lease question. What are the option periods here? Is he going to allow us to go month to month, roughing, or we do a year, or what are we on the hook for?
Sure, Commissioner Beatty, and Tanya can correct me if I'm getting any of this off, but I know we've amended the lease, but I don't think we've amended any of those details. It provides provisions about a holdover for a 90-day period. It sets the rent at $18 per square foot during that 90-day time frame. We would have to give a 90-day advance notice to do that. Then there's a separate portion of the lease that talks about holdover. So there's no additional terms contemplated in the lease. If we would be a holdover tenant, then the rent is twice the base rent. So I think it would be $36 per square foot is the way it's worded.
Right.
Something I would imagine the board may wish to consider is whether we would want to negotiate an extension or a modification of the lease to accommodate that, because the construction window or purchasing and suiting a building may take in excess of the time. I imagine that's where you're going.
It is where I'm going, and I think no matter what we do, whether we go new build Third and Main or Murphin building, Murphin's not moving out of that building until in our purchase contract for a period of time. We're going to have a conversation about either, if we're not staying here, we need to figure out that option period and what that looks like, so we're not putting taxpayers on the hook for an extended period of time. I think we should probably initiate those conversations rather quickly. So I might have some more questions here shortly.
Chairman stepped out for just a minute, so I'll go ahead and ask a few questions. He'll probably be back in a moment here. To Commissioner Dennis's concerns about the current condition, this is simply just showing us the current condition, but our estimates are addressing all of those deficiencies. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So these deficiencies, as they are currently, we're not going to buy a building in that condition. We're going to have all those things taken care of before, if we were to go down that path, they would all be taken care of. It would be fixed according to the cost estimates that we were presented today. Okay.
That's correct, Justin, isn't it? Yeah.
And again, another thing, I don't think it was presented exactly, make sure I understand correctly, but the building size plus the new construction for the auditorium, that brings us up to 84,816 square feet. So it's a little bit more than the 79,000 and change. 84,000 square feet. And again, if you look at the three options this way, I still perceive, maybe I'm wrong, but to Commissioner Beatty's point, I still think the shortest timeline between these three options, obviously staying where we are is the shortest timeline. It's also the most expensive, especially if you look at the 50-year cost. The 50-year cost, that's a little over $1 million per year. I did the quick math based on the numbers you provided. Staying here would be an average of $1,059,000 per year each year for 50 years based on the cost that you estimated. The Third and Main would be $812,000 per year. And the lease cost would be the Murphin building at $690,000 per year. So it's the lease cost. It's also sized right. And again, in terms of the function, the stuff on the last page here, you talk about convenience to public. I think the Murphin building certainly is convenient to public. Parking is easiest there. I'd say actually easier there than would be the other two options, because you have surface parking lot right outside the building. Collaboration between departments, again, by not using the reduced square footage. which was presented as an option today. I think that the collaboration between departments, as long as we're all together, including the row offices, is probably equivalent for the three options that are not the least, the reduced square footage option. Function and efficiency, I think, is equivalent everywhere. And again, I just think because this is probably a shorter timeline still, and again, without question, is the least expensive option. And again, it's a beautiful building that provides all the things the public would want us to have in terms of access to the public and collaboration between departments. And again, a building that's in great shape. I don't know why we would take this off the list. I still think that Murphin is probably the prime contender here in this list. Thank you.
Can I ask one question about the Murphy
go ahead.
building? What year was that built?
I think I had it on the slide.
Oh, I just missed it.
I think it was 1983.
1983.
I just think that's a whole lot of money to spend on buying and updating a building that's older than I am and then hoping that we can stay in it for that long. I mean, that's my concern is we don't know that when it comes to an older building, are we going to have the same life expectancy that we would? Because we're talking about 50 years now, but we've been at the courthouse for, what did we say, 70 years? So, I mean, realistically, this is probably going to be a longer term place than even 50 years. And I just would be really hesitant to spend $33 million for 50 years at a building that hopefully we could stay there that long. But what if something came up and it didn't, just because it's so old? That just gives me some heartburn to spend that much on, like I said, a building that's that old. So that's my concern with that facility.
Does the building have an end of life projected? I mean, do we know it's going to be, we have to move out of the building at some point? Because as far as I know, there's no end of life determined on any of these buildings in terms of, as long as we maintain it, they last as long as you take care of the building.
So the historic courthouse, for example, was built in the late 1800s, and we still own that building. So we've not gotten rid of or dispositioned any property that we own of this magnitude.
Again, I don't know if all commissioners have actually toured the building itself, but again, I've toured the building numerous times, and it is, from my perspective, I didn't see all these problems because I was looking for these problems. And I appreciate the good work that was done here, but the building actually has nice finishes. It's reasonably designed. It's sized right. It's located where we want it. I don't know that. Again, we talk about the $33 million, but again, that's still the least expensive option for the public. So we're concerned about spending $33 million. I don't know why we're not more concerned about spending more than that. Again, it provides, if you will, a space that's doing what we need it to do, and it's, again, the least cost for the taxpayer. I don't know why we take this off our list, and thank you.
If I may, just add a comment real quick, because I think your comments are all accurate there, Commissioner Howell. The one observation I would make is that we talked about that total square footage being 84,800 roughly with the addition of the new BOCC building. Just wanted to remind you that the records management department does not really fit well within that footprint. So we are roughly the total square footage that was programmed, but it excludes one of the departments. So maybe there's consideration for a basement underneath the auditorium for records management, just throwing out an idea. But that roughly 5,700 square feet of space, if that is critical to be with the admin departments, is not accommodated there as presented yet.
And I agree with that. I think that's a problem that we can solve. But second of all, I would notice that the facilities basically has about twice the space in this building that was projected as a need. And also, we're talking about a cafe, which wasn't even in any of the other buildings has not even been discussed at all. But a cafe snack bar area, which is it's a big chunk of space here in this building. Again, not that I would want to use that for records management because it's a first floor. But you asked, my point is this: that space is being used for something that frankly wasn't part of our problem statement.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I had to take a quick phone call. Did
Commissioner,
you
go
weigh in?
ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead. Well, thank you. And remember, these costs include $1.6 million for land that we would buy from the city of Wichita. And that's just an estimate I cannot believe that a partner that we have that's asking us for $200,000 now would say that we're going to have to pay them an additional $1.6 million for a piece of property. So I think some of those costs could come down. In addition, I'm not sure that your repair cost is, as Commissioner Howell pointed out, taking into account everything that you identified in this report. There's concrete cracking in the ceiling down in the basement. We've got the wrong size pump to pump the sewage out downstairs. There's a lot of other things that are in this report that I think when we get into it are going to cost a heck of a lot of money to be able to repair. So the amount that you've got in here, I don't think the answer was correct. That is going to be the total cost for us to get into that building. So I am very concerned about any thought of keeping North Water on our agenda. Thank you.
Did you? I didn't.
I did. I'm trying to pinpoint some of these dates so we know what we're up against.
Okay.
The Water Murphin building, the contract expires, or we need to make decisions by 11:30, correct? What is in the contract right now, the purchase agreement, how long do they have to move out of that building?
Oh, I don't know if I have that off the top of my head. Justin, do you have that?
I do have the contract in front of me. Commissioner, to your question, I'm trying to recall how long we gave them. Give me a second to look
9
this
months.
through.
Was it
I think it was 9 months.
Yeah, that sounds correct,
Yeah.
Tanya.
I'm just in my mind trying to put together how much general fund, if we're staying here, if this isn't the final decision here and we stay here, I have some concerns about what that option period looks like in the lease agreement. And I think we need to get some clarity in that.
I think, Commissioner, just to try and address your question, we have always anticipated that it will take 36 months from the time the
36,
commission
okay.
makes a decision. So when we are anticipating what to put in the financial forecast, that's the time frame that we're working off of.
Okay.
If that helps.
That does help. That's exactly what I need. Yeah, thank you.
And can you explain just what so we have until the end of '24
To use the funds,
to
yes.
use the funds. So, I mean, this is probably not allowed, but I know that we have really until '26 to spend it. Is that correct? So can this, if we renegotiated the lease, if we say we're going to be here for an extra 18 months, just throw that out there, if we pay for it before that end of '24, if we know that's what we're doing, is that allowed? Like, could we
It
still use
would not be allowed, unfortunately. Well, there's two reasons it wouldn't be allowed. First of all, we're not allowed to prepay for a service we haven't received. So we wouldn't be allowed to pay for our rent. Right now, we pay in monthly installments. And then secondly, even if we did renew the contract, unfortunately, and we've asked this question a couple different times of a couple different of our colleagues and experts, we're not able to pay past December 31st, 2024 for a lease. It's really those capital projects where we've obligated ourselves to fund that, and we're able to still make costs as that project progresses. Again, because the intention is not to prepay for any service we haven't provided. So I appreciate the question. Unfortunately, I can't give you good news.
But let me follow up on that. We're going to have an ARPA spend plan presented to us tomorrow.
Yes.
And one of the things we can do, if we're very frugal with what we're spending in ARPA between now and 2024, we can roll that money into the general fund and help pay some of these building costs on acquiring buildings and actually reduce it by using the ARPA funding, correct?
So what we would be allowed to do is actually move costs out of the general fund and into ARPA. So, for example, we can use revenue replacement, which Treasury has computed for us $91 million worth of revenue loss in the 3 years since ARPA has been in effect. So, under those rules, we would be allowed to spend up to $91 million of our ARPA allocation on traditional government services. So, what that would actually look like is we would probably move, for example, sheriff salaries, because there's nothing more fundamental and traditional for government than public safety. So, we would move those costs out of the general fund into ARPA. That would thereby free up cash in the general fund to be used however we would want to use general fund cash. The only concern I have with doing that at this point in time, but to your point, yes, if we're frugal, that would be wonderful. But the problem is we still have a number of CIP projects that we have committed to funding with ARPA funds, and we continue to get bad news on that front in terms of cost overages. So I would still want to wait just a bit more time to commit those dollars until we had a little bit better idea of how that would come in. But yes, we absolutely can use those funds in that fashion.
Do you have any idea, we would want to wait a little bit of time, do you have any idea of time frame of what that would look like?
My comfort level, being a conservative CFO, would be I wouldn't necessarily want to dip into the contingency at all until we come back to you in February with our next ARPA spend plan update. And at that point, I still don't know that I would want us to authorize all of it to be used, but at least we could start chipping into it. But again, I'm prepared to be overruled.
Thank you so much.
And Chairman, can I make a quick comment? I apologize for not having an answer at hand right away, but it is 270 days from the end of the inspection period, which is the November 30th date that we've talked about. So that's the time when closing would occur. And I think as Lindsay was kind of getting to, of course, we would have to suit the building. So it'd be 270 days plus however long it would take to get it ready for county occupancy in terms of a turnaround time frame.
As long as the contract also, either party, I know that's the weird part, either party can.
That's a good point, Chairman. It's a dual-sided, right to terminate within that inspection period. So either party on their own can decide not to go forward with it during that due diligence time frame.
So we have 270 days from the end of November if we go with North Water. How many days if we can finally come up with a decision to build the building?
I mean, I think that's, and Justin, you can correct me, I'll throw it out there. I think it's 18 to 24 on a remodel, probably 24 to,
Like 24 to 30 on a new build, 36 at the outset.
Okay. Lot to chew on here. Again, prioritizing an agenda item for sure should be a public discussion and vote on the North Water. And I think everybody's got a lot of information put in front of us. And if we want to add another agenda item, layer on top of that, or a different agenda item, I think the North Water probably needs to be a clear up, down, go or not vote.
and Chairman, in anticipation of that, I do have an item next week on the agenda for that.
Okay. What other questions do we have? Thank you. This is really good information and great update. So thank you. I know, and it's nice for me to think that we have a third party, involvement, opinion that helps. And so it's not. No offense, Andrew, you're really good, but it helps to have a third party document for us. What else? Anybody else have anything on this? Okay. Anything else, Tom? Okay. Well, I know this was a little long, but it was well worth it. Well worth it. Thank you, and my appreciation to everybody. And thank you, row officers, for being here and being part of this. Okay. See everybody tomorrow.